Nats Chat is brought to you by Walters. The weekend is upon us, and Walters is a great spot to gather for brunch. From chicken and waffles to Walters breakfast tacos, Walters' menu has something for everyone.
On top of that, for only $20, enjoy bottomless drinks, including mimosas, Bloody Marys, Trulies, and old-time lagers. Make your reservation at waltersdc.com today.
Here's the pitch. Swinging a ground ball toward the hole, off the glove of the diving Hayes and out into left field. It's a base hit for Cruz. In from third to score is Escobar. And just like last night, the Nationals out to a 3-0 lead. Cruz is 2 for 2. He's driven in 2 runs.
Here's the pitch to Bell. Swinging a ground ball, vacant shortstop hole for a base hit. Escobar scores. Soto will score without a throw. Cruz holds at second. And Josh Bell, for the second time tonight, grounds one through the vacant shortstop position, and this time he drives in 2. It's the Nationals 7 and Pittsburgh 2.
Castillo does not run in the pitch. Swing and a miss and a curveball at 71 miles an hour. Espino strikes out Tucker, and a Curly W is in the books in Pittsburgh.
And welcome to Nats Chat for Saturday, April 16th, 2022, along with MASNsports.com Nationals insider Mark Zuckerman, who is in Pittsburgh. I'm Al Galdi, host of the Al Galdi podcast. Well, Friday was Jackie Robinson Day in Major League Baseball. Friday also was Good Friday. Friday also was the beginning of Passover. A lot was happening on Friday, but also happening on Friday was a Nationals win, a 7-2 win at the Pirates in Game 2 of a 4-game series. Nats now are 4-5 on the season. Erick Fedde was solid for a second time in as many starts this season. The Nats bullpen, which ended up being like a mixture of the A and B bullpens, was excellent on Friday evening. The Nats continued to hit a bunch of singles, but the Nats scored 7 runs. The Nats even had their first stolen base of the season. Took a while, but we got it. And Mark, here we are. Nats are 4-2 since their 0-3 start.
And like we've seen now, like there's a formula here. When they follow the formula, they win. When their starter gives them 5 innings, they're now 4-0. When the starter doesn't get to 5 innings, they're 0-5. So if that isn't the obvious line of demarcation that tells you what the outcome of the game is going to be, there it is for you. Fedde wasn't great, but he did what he needed to do. He finished strong, got it to the bullpen. And on this night, it's a close game in the 6th. So you go to Sean Doolittle, who again was fantastic. But then because the offense kept tacking on, it allowed Davey to pass over the rest of the A bullpen and use Austin Voth and Paolo Espino to close it out. And the rest of those guys could just sit back and relax in a comfortable reclined position in the bullpen for the rest of the night.
Yeah, I mean, it would have been a shanda if Davey had to go start using his A relievers in this game with the Nats putting up the 7 runs. So it was nice to see that. I mean, you know, we talk so often about A bullpens, B bullpens. The fact of the matter is you're allowed to mix the two. Like the 2 sets of relievers are allowed to intermingle. And so if what seems like an A bullpen game becomes a B bullpen game, that's a good thing. And that is, in fact, what happened on Friday night.
Yeah, and to that, give credit to Austin Voth, because we don't always know that it's going to be a clean inning for him. And he had 2 very clean innings on 21 pitches, and then our boy Paolo Espino closed it out. But yeah, you're right. I mean, you do need to be able to trust some of these guys with a lead and not always have to count on the same ones when you're ahead. And what this also does is now, you know, Saturday night, if they're in a good position again, you have a bunch of available top relievers who could pitch the late innings for you. I mean, the way it's worked so far, they haven't had a lot of back-to-back games where they've needed, you know, Rainey, Finnegan, Doolittle. And now because they didn't have to use them in this one, they are in a position to now come back to them if they're able to, you know, be ahead late on Saturday night.
It all started with Fedde on Friday night, and we all get it that the standard for Nats starting pitching this season is not sky high, but the truth is Erick Fedde has been the Nats' best starting pitcher so far this season. He gives you 2 runs in 5 innings, 6 strikeouts. He only allowed 4 hits, a double and 3 singles. He issued 2 walks. You know, he wasn't pitch efficient. He threw 96 pitches over the 5 innings. I was thinking about this, though. I mean, here we are now 9 games into the Nats season, and the standard clearly is if you get 5 innings from the starting pitcher, that's a good thing. When do you think we will finally see a Nats starter get to 6 innings? Like, do you think it won't be until May? What are we looking at? I was thinking about this last night after we taped the show. If I set an over-under on times this season that a Nats starting pitcher goes at least 6 innings, let's say I set the over-under of 50, let's say, right? So less than a third of the season. Would you go over or under? Because honestly, right now, I think I might go under. And that's crazy to say that. But no one has even sniffed 6 innings so far. And right now, we're all just kind of doing cartwheels over anyone who can last for 5 innings. It's just remarkable to me how our perception of things has changed with the Nats starting pitching.
I think it was, Josh Rogers reached the 6th, but only got 1 out before he came out. And he's the only one to even touch the 6th inning. It's a great question. I hadn't considered it like that. At first, I was going to say, well, obviously more than 50 times, but maybe not, both because of who they're putting out there, but it's also kind of the new philosophy anyways in baseball. You just don't see that many starters going deep in games. So would it shock me if they only got it about 50 times? I mean, yeah, given the lack of veterans and guys, with track records that they have in the rotation, that it's entirely possible. What I thought was interesting here is that Davey was actually kind of critical of Fedde after this one.
Fedde struggled, an inning there just by the walks.
Because of the high pitch count early in the game that sort of left it where he was never going to be able to go beyond 5. He thought, especially with a 3-0 lead, go after them more. He said, what's your best pitch? It's a cutter. Don't throw the whole kitchen sink at them early in the game. Get ahead in the count with your best pitch. Try to get some quick outs. And now maybe you can get to the 6th inning with your total under 100. And, I think that's showing that he expects a little more from someone who's now been in the big leagues for a while. And for better or worse, Fedde is one of their more established starters at this point. Davey's trying to set the bar a little higher for him. And I think Eric knows that too. And I think he feels like next time around, certainly 2 times from now, he's had enough now to build his arm up. I mean, 96 pitches, that's like the equivalent of your last spring training start, probably. So I think he would tell you that next time out, or at least 2 times out from now, he should be consistently reaching the 6th inning and topping 100 pitches.
The problem inning for Fedde on Friday night was that bottom of the second. He gave up 2 runs in that inning, gave up a leadoff full count opposite field single to Yoshi Tsutsugo to left center, issued a 6-pitch walk of Ben Gamble, issued a 2-out 6-pitch walk of Andrew Knapp, who Fedde at one point had down 0-2. And then Fedde gave up a 2-out bases-loaded 2-run opposite field single to Hoy Park to shallow left on a 1-2 pitch. That single cut the Nats' lead to 3-2. I mean, I think it's funny with Fedde because he isn't pitch efficient. He never really has been pitch efficient, and 96 pitches in 5 innings is way too many. But part of the reason for that were the 6 strikeouts. And we've discussed this, but he has become more of a strikeout pitcher over these last few seasons. I think it's tricky with pitchers because you want strikeouts, but you also recognize that strikeouts drive up pitch counts. So it's like you want to try to find that right balance of striking guys out, but, not throwing 100 pitches in 5 innings, that sort of a thing. So I'm not sure if you're Davey, if you would rather Fedde sacrifice some strikeouts for more pitch efficiency or not. But I do think that is part of what happened here. It's all a matter of perspective, though. For years in baseball, we've had this phrase of 5 and dive, and it's an insulting phrase. It's meant to say you can't last for more than 5 innings, and once you hit the 5-inning mark, that's it. You take a dive and you're done. I think this season with the Nats, if you can go 5 innings, that's a thumbs up. So to me, I look at Fedde, 2 runs in 5 innings. If you would have told me that going into this game on Friday night, I would have signed up for that, and he did give you that.
Yeah, certainly the standard has changed a lot. And, some of that is the start of the season, again, like we've been talking about. I think you do raise the bar a little bit as we move forward and get deeper into the season. But right now, given the makeup of the bullpen, given where the starters are at, you will take 5 and dive as long as it's a quality 5 is good. They haven't had a true quality start yet by the strict definition of that term. But I'm calling this one a quality start as well as several that they've had here over the last week. If you're doing what you need to do to put your team in position to win, then you've done your job. But one thing I will say, and I think we brought this up the other night, on May 1st, they have to reduce the roster from 28 to 26. And all of a sudden, instead of a 10-man bullpen, it's an 8-man bullpen. In turn, that is going to sort of force the starters to go a little deeper because you can't just say, we're going to use 4 guys tonight, 4 guys tomorrow night. But that's everybody. That's all you have. So I do think that puts some added stress either on the starters to get you through the 6th more, or you're going to have a couple of guys in your bullpen who can go multiple innings. Now, Voth did it on this night. We know Paolo Espino can do it, but how many do they have that consistently can do that? I'm not sure. So that might be an interesting question 2 weeks from now when they get to the roster reduction of how do they assemble their bullpen, knowing that they are going to have to ask for a little more out of them unless their starters can start going deeper.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to have to be on the pen because I don't know how you can look at this rotation and think all of a sudden multiple guys are going to consistently start giving you 6 innings. I mean, if it happens, great, but it's hard to look at the rotation and have great faith that that will be coming. But all things considered, Fedde put the Nats in position to win, and the Nats bullpen on Friday night was lights out. 3 Nats relievers, Sean Doolittle, Austin Voth, and Paolo Espino combined for 4 scoreless innings, 3 of which were perfect innings. I mean, how about Doolittle so far? I know it's early. I know that the appearances aren't many, but a perfect bottom of the 6th on 14 pitches, 11 of which were strikes. I love how Davey is using Doolittle. The inning doesn't matter. It's about the matchups, as we've discussed, and Doolittle in every circumstance this season has looked great so far. And then I think the surprise of the night was Voth. You know, he tosses that perfect bottom of the 7th on 11 pitches. You say, all right, probably done for the night, although who knows? Comes back out for the 8th, perfect bottom of the 8th with 2 strikeouts. So 2 perfect innings from Austin Voth. Like you said, you're never quite sure what we're going to get from him. He at times doesn't look good, but he can look good. And I guess that's what he does. He teases you. He's like seduces you into saying, well, geez, he can look so good. Why doesn't he like this all the time? But he sure looked great on Friday night. And then our guy, Paolo Espino, the secret weapon, with a scoreless bottom of the 9th inning. You know, the Nats pen obviously did have some issues in game 1 of the series, especially Andres Machado and Patrick Murphy. But overall, man, since the 0-3 start, the bullpen, for the most part, has been a strength for this Nats team.
Yeah, it has. The thing about Voth that was most impressive, those last 2 outs in the 8th, he struck out Brian Reynolds and Key Brian Hayes, their best hitters. So talk about finishing strong to give you those 2 solid innings. And then, like you said, in the 6th, why on this night was Sean Doolittle pitching the 6th when on all other nights he would pitch later in the game? Well, because of the matchups. We talked about this. You don't have to necessarily hold a guy for a late inning because that's his designated inning. The Pirates had their 2 big lefties up, Tsutsugo and Gamble, in the 6th. So Davey had his one and only lefty ready to go at that point. And I think that's a nice adaptation by the manager in how he is starting to set up the bullpen. And you can do that when you have multiple reliable relievers, as they seem to have right now. But Sean Doolittle, let's talk about this now. 12 batters faced this season, 12 batters retired, 5 strikeouts. He's thrown 40 pitches, 31 strikes. That's in 4 innings. That is as good as it gets. He looks like peak Sean Doolittle. Erick Fedde even said he thinks he might look better now than he did last time around because he's incorporating that breaking ball and throwing it really well. Remember, he was fastball all the time, maybe just the occasional breaking ball or changeup to keep them off balance. He's actually using that breaking ball now effectively. And, you know, it's 4 games. You don't want to get too excited here. You knock on wood and all that. But boy, it is hard not to be impressed with this and think that we may be seeing a second coming of Sean Doolittle here, which is just an astounding thought given where he was a year ago.
Sean Doolittle's average 4-seam fastball velocity this season coming into Friday night per Fangraphs was 94.1 miles per hour. His best since 2017. You think about that. His best in 5 years is what he's had so far this year. Now, we understand it's early. We'll see if the velocity diminishes as the season goes on. But when Doolittle really started declining with the Nats, I mean, the velocity was the thing. The velocity plummeted. That he has figured out a way to get it back up is awesome. And I do think that changes the Sean Doolittle conversation. Like, I think we all viewed him as aging reliever, not what he was at his peak. If you can get some decent production out of him, great. But if, in fact, he has somehow turned back the clock, maybe the Sean Doolittle of, say, 2017 can be a thing again. Like, maybe the guy who came here and really helped to stabilize that Nats bullpen in 2017 can all of a sudden be back here for the Nats in 2022.
So the key is going to be how much does Davey have to use him? He's been able to space out his appearances right now. If they get to a point that he is pitching more consistently, that's when he sort of broke down, when he was the only guy and they had to use him almost every time they had a lead, often for multiple innings. And you saw the wear and tear of that. And, you know, it almost derailed his career as a result. So you would hope that they have enough depth now that they don't have to keep putting him out there that much. But you also, you know, if he's this good, you're going to want to start using him every opportunity you get. And so I think it's going to be a fine balance, and I'll be interested to see how that plays out. Is Davey able to keep it as a, you know, 2 or 3 times a week? Or does it become, hey, we really need you for 4 or even 5 times a week? And then if that is the case, how does his arm, how does his body react to that? You hope it doesn't break down again, but that would be the one area of concern. That's sort of like that last step he needs to get over. He's looking great right now. Let's see, does he hold up as the workload increases over time?
Yeah, and as we approach that MLB trade deadline of August 2nd, so the Nats can get something good for him.
Nice night, Alan. You had to just throw that in again.
The trade value is skyrocketing right now for Sean Doolittle. I love it. I love it. Keep doing as you do. By the way, Sean Doolittle's career has turned around since appearing on the Nats Chat podcast. That is not a coincidence. The karma of the Nats Chat podcast has struck again with Sean Doolittle having success.
So anybody else out there who needs to kind of turn things around, give us a call. We will happily put you on, turn your whole life around.
Hey, Victor Robles' agent called me today. He said, put Victor on the Nats Chat podcast. I said, I'll see what I can do, all right? But we're very busy right now, so I can't promise you anything. Are you a law firm partner looking for a better situation for your practice and a blockbuster contract worthy of Juan Soto? If so, you should call Mason Kalfas of Zenith Legal in Washington, D.C. He works with law firms and lawyers on finding the perfect match. No platoons, just superstars. Some lawyers switch firms because of conflicts. Some lawyers switch firms for a better platform for their practice. And some lawyers switch firms for more money. You need the Scott Boras of legal headhunters working for you, and that's Mason. Mason will work with you to find a better fit for your practice and ultimately the best deal for you and your entire team. Call him today at 202-486-3535 or check out his website, zenithlegal.com. This is an unprecedented time in the legal market, and many top firms are looking to expand. Call Mason today. Zenith Legal also works with associates and distinguishes itself on personal service. Zenith Legal doesn't just spam resumes out to law firms. Zenith Legal talks to the right people and gets your resume in front of the decision makers who matter. Whether you are a Rainmaker partner or a mid-level associate, give Mason Kalfas at Zenith Legal a call today to accelerate your career. Call today, 202-486-3535.
Swinging a line drive to right. That's going to be a base hit. And sliding to get to it is the right fielder Tucker. Rounding third, Hernandez. He'll come in to score. Soto's on his way to third, and there without a play, rounding the bag. As the throw comes into the second baseman, Castillo, who runs it in towards the mound. It's a single to right center field for Cruz, holding it first. Drives in his 4th run of the year. Runners on first and third, still with nobody out. 3 hits in a row to start the game. It's the Nationals 1 and the Pirates nothing.
Well, the Nats offense on Friday night, 7 runs. It was good to see this. The Nats continue to not get much in the way of extra base hits. 10 hits in the game, 8 of which were singles. The Nats are single and ready to mingle these days. But look, the offense was good on Friday night. 10 hits, 6 walks. So the Nats did once again draw walks. And the Nats have started to hit with runners in scoring position a bit here, 5 of 14 on Friday night. What really jumped out was the production from the top 4 in the lineup on Friday night. Cesar Hernandez, Juan Soto, Nelson Cruz, and Josh Bell. Those 4 guys, batters 1 through 4, combined 8 of 16 with 4 walks and 6 RBI. Cruz and Bell each with 3 RBI. But I got to tell you, man, I am fascinated by what is going on right now with Cesar Hernandez. He has gotten on base to begin each of the Nats' last 5 games. That's crazy. I'd love to know in the history of the Nats, how many times has that ever happened? The leadoff man in his first plate appearance in each of 5 straight games gets on base. And, not so coincidentally, we're seeing the Nats score some runs in these recent first innings. Friday night, a 2-run first. Cesar Hernandez getting things going with a leadoff opposite field single through the left side of the infield. I mean, he's not doing much in the way of extra base hits. He's still not really drawing that many walks, but he is piling up the singles. And every game, you have now this supreme confidence that Cesar is going to begin things for the Nats by getting on base.
And not just getting on base, but scoring runs. The last 4 days, he has gotten on base and scored in the top of the first to give them a lead. And it's a great thing to see. It's exactly what you want. If you're going to be hitting in front of Juan Soto, Nelson Cruz, and Josh Bell, you better get on base as much as possible. And that's exactly what he's done. It's worked out perfectly. So that's been a nice development for him. The only other leadoff hitter they've had I can think who maybe had a streak like this was named Kyle Schwarber. And the difference was, he was scoring runs. He was driving himself in. That's how he did it.
The hottest man on the planet leading off against him, Kyle Schwarber. First pitch belted, deep right field, way back, going, goodbye! A first pitch fastball off the facing of the third deck down the right field line. His 7th leadoff home run of the year, is second in as many games in the 12th of his career.
Yeah, it's really remarkable when you think about this, because the Nats in recent years have had kind of a revolving door in terms of that leadoff spot. Not that they haven't had someone like a Trea Turner who was capable of it, but we've seen various guys get used in that role. We all kind of wondered going into the season, well, Cesar Hernandez, Davey's so committed to him. We'll see how he continues to do, but hard to complain right now with what he is doing. Juan Soto on Friday night got on base 4 times, 2 for 3 with 2 singles and 2 walks. Nelson Cruz on Friday night, 2 for 4 with 2 singles, a walk, and 3 RBI. And what jumped out to me with Cruz on Friday night, all 4 of his plate appearances saw him down 0-2 or 1-2, but do something productive. Cruz in the Nats 2-run first, opposite field RBI single to right field on an 0-2 pitch for a 1-0 Nats lead. Cruz in the Nats 1-run second, a 2-out RBI single on a 1-2 pitch on a well-hit grounder that went off the Pirates' third baseman, Key Brian Hayes, for a 3-0 Nats lead. Cruz in the Nats 1-run fourth, a 1-out RBI groundout on a 1-2 pitch for a 4-2 Nats lead. Cruz in the Nats 2-run sixth, 1-out 7-pitch walk off having been down 1-2. Again, not hitting for a lot of power. We know that will come, but, that cliche of professional hitter, you do see that with Nelson Cruz. Like, he will go the opposite way. He will work a count, and we saw him do that on Friday night.
Yeah, that's a case of a guy understanding situational hitting. Hey, there's runners in scoring position. I just need to get them in somehow. And he did a really good job of that. And I think the power is going to be there. We all know in the end that's going to be there. He's still hitting balls on the ground a lot, kind of like Soto last year, to be honest. I think he just needs to get the timing down a little bit, maybe start a little sooner. Next thing you know, he's going to be elevating. And as the weather heats up, I think he'll start doing that. So I'm not too worried about that. But Soto gets on base 4 times, first time this year that he's done that. Remember, he did it 26 times last year, a number that has only been topped in history by a couple guys named Babe Ruth and Barry Bonds, who are pretty good. And yet it was like such a quiet get on base 4 times night. We didn't even really think about it. Not because it was not important to the team, but we just kind of come to expect this from him. 2 singles and 2 walks. Never gives away an at-bat. It's a great sign that he's already doing that. And then to have Cruz and then Josh Bell with a couple of big hits, who also good situational hitting from Bell. Both of his hits, both of them driving in runs, were opposite field against the shift. If you get a pitch out of the park, go for it. If not, take what they give you. They're going to give you the whole left side of the infield. Just put it right through that hole. Take it, take your RBI. And those were some good professional at-bats from all the top 4 guys in their lineup tonight.
Yeah, Josh Bell, the ex-Pirate, doing well on Friday night at the Pirates. 2 of 4, 2 singles and a walk. Has any Nat been better so far this season than Josh Bell? 9 games into the season, he's batting .333, is a .450 on-base percentage. He's slugging .545. He's been outstanding offensively for the Nats. In terms of, other guys who stood out on Friday night, was a rough game for Keibert Ruiz, 0 for 5. He left 6 men on base. We did once again see Yadiel Hernandez out there as a starting outfielder for the Nats. He was a starting left fielder, 1 for 3 with a double and a walk. So Yadiel continues to hit. But boy, it's hard not to notice this. I mean, forget about Victor Robles not being the everyday center fielder. I mean, is Victor now just a bench player for the Nats? I mean, the Nats on Friday put Dee Strange-Gordon on the injured list. We can get to that in a bit, but you once again had Lane Thomas as a starting center fielder and Yadiel Hernandez as a starting left fielder. It feels like we're seeing less and less of Victor right now.
So if we are to believe Davey Martinez, and I know we discussed the other night how much we should listen to what he says or not, Victor's going to be in there on Saturday and on Sunday. Darnell Coles, the hitting coach, wanted to spend 2 days working with him on this swing. They liked what they saw from him in batting practice on Friday. Now, he did come in for defense late and then wound up getting an at-bat in the 9th inning, and he grounded out to short. So it wasn't like it was a whole lot to work on there. But Davey is saying we're going to see him the next 2 days, that this was a calculated decision to let him work on some things that they've been working on. But he's now 0 for 16, I think, on the season. Yadiel Hernandez is hitting the ball well, and at some point you have to say, well, does he give us our best chance? Lane Thomas, who had been struggling at times, had an RBI double in this game. It's an interesting question that's coming to a head. I don't think Victor's out altogether, but I would say that if he really is in the lineup on Saturday and Sunday, he needs to make the most of that. He needs to show them something in those two games to suggest that he has turned a corner and figured something out. Because if he doesn't, and now we get back to the homestand starting Monday, and Yadiel's still hitting, and maybe Lane's starting to hit. We haven't seen Donovan Casey yet, who was called up today. There are a lot of alternative options for Davey if he wants to go there. And one of these days, Victor Robles is going to have to prove that he should be out there on a regular basis. If you're him, you don't want to give Davey reason not to play him. And right now he's bordering on that.
Yeah, and it is interesting with Yadiel and Lane because, like we said, Yadiel is hitting. I mean, Yadiel is batting 400 now on the season, and Lane did have a big hit on Friday night. He had in the Nats 1-run fifth, a 2-out RBI double to the left center field gap for a 5-2 Nats lead. Now, he did kind of bizarrely get thrown out by a mile at third base for the third out. He was trying to advance on a swinging strike that got away from the Pirates catcher, Andrew Knapp, ended up being gunned down. But yeah, I mean, if Lane Thomas gets going, well, now you have two outfielders who are hitting ahead of Victor Robles, who obviously has not been hitting so far. So you mentioned Donovan Casey. I brought up the Dee Strange-Gordon situation. So just to catch everybody up, Dee Strange-Gordon was supposed to be the Nats starting center fielder in game one of the series on Thursday evening. Was a late scratch due to illness. If you watch Davey Martinez's post-game session with reporters, he was kind of vague, almost cryptic about what happened. Dee Strange-Gordon was ill, and the Nats on Friday put Dee Strange-Gordon on the injured list and recalled outfielder Donovan Casey from AAA Rochester. Now, look, I mean, I don't think you have to be Sherlock Holmes to figure out what may be going on here with Dee Strange-Gordon. I don't know why the Nats can't just come out and say what's happening here. But normally when a guy goes on an injured list, the Nats will specify the injured list, right? 10-day injured list, 60-day injured list. Last year, there was a COVID-19 injured list. Usually when a guy went on it, the Nats would just say the guy was going on the injured list. So by that deduction, is Dee Strange-Gordon on the COVID-19 injured list? Is there still a COVID-19 injured list for this season?
There is, and the reason that I think it's pretty safe to say that that's what's happened here is that when you go on the COVID IL, you do not count against the 40-man roster. The Nationals made another 40-man roster move. On Friday, they claimed an outfielder off waivers from the Blue Jays, Joshua Palacios. Their 40-man roster was full. So the only way to clear a spot is if Dee Strange-Gordon is no longer on the 40-man roster. And unless he's on the 60-day IL, which he's not because he's not injured, that's the only way it can happen. So, yes, read between the lines. There are privacy issues here. I think it has to do with the player has to consent to that being publicly told by the team. But all we have to do is look at how they handled these the last 2 years and to understand that this is what has happened. Now, supposedly he's feeling better. He's still at the hotel. You hope that nothing serious and that he gets by it. I will also say there were 3 players in the clubhouse pregame on Friday wearing masks on their faces. And that is one of the protocols right now that if you are vaccinated and you're deemed a close contact of someone who tests positive, then you have to mask for, I believe, 5 days. So would not be surprised if those people maybe sat on the plane near Dee Strange-Gordon on the flight up from Atlanta. Again, we're interpreting a lot here, but I think it's pretty safe to say that we know what's going on. We hope that he's fine, that he's back soon. But that would explain why the 40-man roster spot opened up and everything else that went on Friday.
Yeah, what a difference, though, a year makes, right? Because last year, early in the season, in fact, the Nats' start of the season was delayed because of guys getting COVID. Here we have in the early portion of the season a guy pretty clearly getting it. And, it's not like great or anything, but it's not like it's shutting down the season or, forcing this widespread panic or anything like that. So that's interesting. So this guy, Donovan Casey, one of the 4 prospects who the Nats got back from the Dodgers in the trade package for Max Scherzer and Trea Turner last July 30th. Casey was obviously only in the Nats organization for a little while last year, ended up being named the Nats 2021 Minor League Defensive Player of the Year. If you go by the MLB pipeline rankings, he is the Nats number 19 prospect. He's an older prospect. This season is his age 26 season. Do you think we'll be seeing any of Donovan Casey this weekend?
At some point, yeah. I mean, I don't think he's being brought up here because he's going to play every day, anything like that. But they want to get a look at him. They wouldn't have called him up if they didn't think so. He's a good athlete. He's a kind of a big guy, long arms and legs. He can play all three outfield positions, so that's good. He was off to a pretty good start at Rochester. I think it's 2 doubles, 2 triples, and a homer so far in just 6 games. So I think they're going to try to find the right spot for him and see if they can, find a way to do that. But certainly the way Robles has struggled, that, maybe there is an opportunity to get him in there at some point. I don't know that in the long run he profiles as an everyday outfielder. Maybe he will, but he's already 26, just finally making his major league debut. So I would think long term is maybe more of like a 4th outfielder type, but that's kind of what we thought Lane Thomas was. And he proved that maybe he is more than that. At least so far he has. So you never know. We'll get a look at him here at some point. He was really excited to get the call. He wasn't necessarily expecting it this soon. He said he was in a meeting with the team in Rochester on Thursday afternoon. And Matt LeCroy, the manager, announces to everybody, hey, we just had a player called up. And Donovan says he just assumes it's a pitcher. And next thing you know, LeCroy's announcing his name. And he almost had to pause and comprehend that for a second before I realized oh no, wait, that's me. I'm coming up. So pretty cool thing for him. And, pretty cool to say that now 3 of the 4 prospects they acquired from the Dodgers for Trea Turner and Max Scherzer are on the big league roster. Keibert Ruiz, Josiah Gray, and Donovan Casey, and maybe Gerardo Carrillo we will see here at some point as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's obviously a function of a lot of things, but, the Nats got prospects from the Dodgers who obviously were not years away. They got guys who were right on the doorstep, if not, like in the case of Josiah Gray, had already debuted. In fact, Ruiz had debuted already too at the major league level when the Nats got him last year. So yeah, 3 of the 4 who are on the Nats right now. That's kind of crazy. You tell us what you think. You can hit us up on Twitter at Nats_chat. You can email the podcast, natschatpodcast@gmail.com, including if you would like to become a sponsor of the Nats Chat podcast, hit up Tim Shovers and see what we can do for you. We got this email from another Tim. It's a question for you, Mark. He says, my question is how the universal designated hitter affects various aspects of the off-the-field game. For example, is the job of the equipment staff much easier because the staff doesn't need to take bats and batting helmets for pitchers on road trips? Do the position players get more batting practice now that pitchers no longer need the reps? Interesting question. Tim is obviously a deep thinker, thinking about these things. Have you noticed any differences with the universal DH?
So that is not one I had considered previously, but it is a good, interesting question there. Certainly, it's a lot less equipment than to not have to have the pitcher's batting helmets, although typically they would only have helmets for the starters. I feel like the relievers, if they ever had to take an at-bat, might just grab someone else's and maybe not have one designated for them since they didn't do a lot. As far as BP goes, the way they would typically do it would be whoever that night's starter was would take an early round of BP in the afternoon. But that would be it. You wouldn't have all of them. Every once in a while, you'd want to get, let them all get their swings. But that would be earlier in the afternoon. So the true what we call BP, when fans are in the park in the, 4:30 to 5 o'clock range, those are the standard hitting groups of the position players. And it's usually 3 groups. The first 2 are the guys who are in the lineup that night. And then the third group are the bench players. So if pitchers hit, it's usually much earlier in the afternoon, not with them. So I don't think this has necessarily changed anything in terms of, it's not like there's now more BP for the position players. I think they already had what they were going to do all along. It might just mean a little bit of less early work and certainly a lot fewer helmets for Mike Wallace and the clubhouse crew to have to worry about bringing with them all over the country.
One more thing. So how about the fact that Alcides Escobar on Friday night in the Nats 1-run second draws a leadoff 4-pitch walk and steals a base, the first stolen base for the Nats. Not something that probably most people were monitoring, but, it's not until game number 9 in the season that we see a stolen base for a Nat. And, I guess now that Trea Turner is not here and stealing bases is something that's fading for a lot of different reasons, including analytics, I guess we shouldn't be shocked by that. That is kind of quirky, though. It took 9 games into the season for the Nats to register a stolen base.
Well, and also think about another reason why, because Victor Robles has not been on base to attempt it. He'd be the other one to do it. Here's the crazy thing. They were 0 for 2 on attempts prior to this. You know who the 2 guys were to attempt a stolen base prior to Alcides Escobar?
I know Josh Bell was one.
Yes, he was. The other one, and I don't even remember this. I got to go back and find it. Yadiel Hernandez. I don't remember how that came about. I must have blocked that one from my memory already. Who would have thought the first 2 stolen bases of the season were attempted by Josh Bell and Yadiel Hernandez?
That's crazy. That's good. Maybe that's why the Nats had 0 stolen bases up until Game 9 on the season. All Nationals highlights on Nats Chat are courtesy of 106.7 The Fan. We continue to solicit for your tales of your first Major League games that you attended. On the next installment of the Nats Chat podcast, barring something crazy, Mark and I will be telling our tales of our first Major League games that we attended. But you tell us yours. You can email us, natschatpodcast@gmail.com, and you can email both in written form and in voice memo form. Record yourself in your smartphone and email the file to us. So don't forget, you can get yourself a Nats Chat podcast t-shirt by going to natschatpodcast.square.site. That's natschatpodcast.square.site. For Mark Zuckerman, I'm Al Galdi. We'll talk to you next time on the Nats Chat podcast. And we leave you with Paul from Ontario with his story of his first Major League game.
Hey, Nats Chat. This is Paul Frampton from Lindsay, Ontario, Canada, back with another voice memo, this time about my first ever ball game, which was between the Toronto Blue Jays and the Seattle Mariners. We got to the game early enough that we could watch the Mariners practice. My older brother, myself, and a couple other kids in the section stood as close to the players as we could, hoping to get a ball. While all the other kids and my brother stood there with their hand out, just waiting, I stood there with my arms crossed. As the Mariners finished their practice, one of the players, an outfielder, whose name I forget at this point, came running over, grabbed me by the hand, and put a ball in my hand. Needless to say, I was thrilled and ran back to my parents. The story takes a turn after the game, though. As we were headed home and my father was listening to the post-game chat on the radio, they announced that the very player who had handed me the ball had been traded by the Seattle Mariners. My father locked eyes with me in the rearview mirror and exclaimed, "He must have been traded for giving you that ball." I, of course, believed it because I was a gullible little child. And I believed that for well over a year until we attended another baseball game, and I refused to go near any of the players because I didn't want to get any of them traded. Now that I'm 40 years old and I look back on it, it was a hilarious prank that my father pulled, and I completely fell for it. And that was my first ever ball game.
With pinch batter Frank Keller at bat, Robinson dashes for the plate. It's close, and umpire Summers calls him safe on the daring maneuver. But Yogi Berra doesn't think so. And the fans will never forget the sight of Jackie Robinson hurrying for the plate on his daring steal.